That got me exploring the history of abortion and contraception and the history of sexual revolution. Men hijacked women's movements in order to promote their agenda, which was basically free sex and getting to do women what they want. After I realized this, and after coming in contact with SLI and Pro-Life Global, I realized there is a deep call for me in order to stand for life.
Hello and welcome to Lifesavers. In today's episode, we are so happy to welcome Anse Mathachan, who is leading our pro-life outreach in India. And Anse himself spearheaded one of the very first pro-life student groups in all of India, and now has had the chance to mentor dozens of other pro-life leaders from across the country to help build up a culture of life in the world which suffers set around 15 to 18 million abortions every single year. So, Anse, thank you so much for being a voice for life in a culture which is very dark to the dignity of human value, the gift that life is from God, and our responsibility to fight for it. Welcome to Lifesavers.
Thank you, Rachel, and thank you, Pro-Life Global, for constantly mentoring me and giving me this opportunity to share about pro-life activities in India. As you rightly mentioned, an estimated 15.6 million abortions happen in India every year. That is around 1.56 crore or 42,000 babies killed in abortion every day. This is a sad reality in the country. The rates are much more than the Western countries.
2,000 abortions every single day. That
Yes.
is sobering. That is absolutely horrible. And
Yeah.
why do you think that there are so many abortions in India?
Historically, India and China were the most populous countries in the world. When you look at the global abortion ideology history, some people, especially population controllers, had very evil vision for our country, I would say. In fact, abortion became legal in the US in 1973. It became legal in India 2 years before. Our country perceives a lot of people, especially Christians in our country, perceives this to be a Western problem. A lot of 80% of the 15.6 million abortions happening in the country are happening from medical abortions because the over the counter pill is accessible in the country. There are certain safeguards put up by the government, but it is often ignored to the point where women take these pills without any gynecological supervision or ultrasonography. This is also leading to a lot of damage, physical impacts for women because of incomplete abortion, things like that.
Right. Well, it's such a shame that, and it's just heartbreaking that these women are obtaining abortion pills and then being left alone to administer the abortion to themselves, and they're left alone to then suffer the hemorrhages that so often result from taking medical abortions. And even when um, people in India do go to obtain like a surgical abortion, it's under the auspices of legitimate medical care when it is not. I know that in India, abortions take place at the government hospitals.
That is
So
right.
in one room, you will be caring for someone who is suffering from a disease and you are trying to help restore their life. And then in the next room over, you are having the same physician or another brother physician taking the life of another individual. And this
Yeah.
hypocrisy is something that we see not only in India, but we see this around the world. We certainly see it in the US. We see this in the narrative of the pro-abortion lobby, where they say that this is healthcare.
Yeah.
And healthcare is the absolute opposite of what abortion is, because it's seeking to take life, not restore life. But
Yes.
we're so glad that you're able to join us, Ants, because we are in the midst of our series Men on Mission. And we invited you to come on our podcast today because I know you've been an inspiration to so many in your leadership in the pro-life cause in India. And we want to hear from you, especially as you're speaking to both men and women who are interested in becoming involved in the pro-life cause, but especially to men who might feel like they don't have a voice. Maybe they feel like they have to just sit on the sidelines while women are left alone to make this decision about their pregnancy. So what would you say to um, men in the pro-life movement, and maybe you can start with how you became involved in the pro-life cause.
Sure. Before getting into how I became a pro-lifer or what I have to tell to men, I would like to share a little bit, share a note to women listening to me. Some of you might think, what does a guy have to talk about abortion? After all, it's a women's issue. I just want to acknowledge that there were times when men have left women, abandoned women, have left them to the abortion choice because of our irresponsibility. So when I'm standing here, when I am helping in the pro-life movement, I just want to tell all women, we are not here to point fingers at you or to blame you. We realize that things have happened to you. Men have probably walked out on you or cheated you, and you are in this situation. The goal here is empathy. The goal here is to acknowledge and to share that women deserves better than abortion, because abortion kills babies and impacts women psychologically, physically, and spiritually. So my journey as a pro-lifer started in this Catholic charismatic movement called Jesus Youth. Jesus Youth is the second pontifically approved movement in Asian continent. It had its origins in Kerala, and I encountered this movement in my college days. Jesus Youth Pro-Life Ministry or Pro-Life Wing started around 30 years back when they were responding to the United Nations Cairo resolution, which aimed at promoting abortion as a human right. So my turning point, I would say, was when I was attending this conference jointly hosted by Jesus Youth and Human Life International. Some of you might be familiar with HLI's work in the US and elsewhere around the world. This conference was called Asia Pacific Conference on Faith, Family, and Life. And I would say I was not much of a pro choice guy, but I deeply believed in population control. And if you are led your whole life to believe that India has a overpopulation problem, then you automatically end up believing in contraception, abortion, euthanasia, etc. So I was not a pro-choice guy per se, but I definitely was a contraception guy. I mean, someone who thought that is something which will help our country develop. But when I was presented with facts, with perspectives of the Catholic Church and what is happening around the world, I mean, I came to know that there are countries where there is no basic sanitation or basic food safety and security. Yet, one of the major ways by which rich countries spend money is by providing contraception access and abortion access. And I was like, really, why does this happen? That got me exploring the history of abortion and contraception and the history of sexual revolution. You know, how certain men hijacked women's movements and feminist movements, such men can actually get more women to do abortions. There is a great video by Lila Rose, founder and president of Live Action, describing how men hijacked women's movements in order to promote their agenda, which was basically free sex
Mm.
and getting to do women what they want. After I realized this, and after coming in contact with SLI and Pro Life Global, I desired, I realized there is a deep call for me in order to stand for life. I think this is also stemming from my profession as a social worker. So, for people who do not know me, I am currently pursuing my doctoral studies in social work from Christ University, Bangalore. Now, when you look at social work, the history and evolution of social work was basically responding to the evils of industrial revolution, where human beings were not considered as dignified beings. They were just considered as items to be exploited and discarded. So the idea of human rights is a central tenet of social work profession. And I would say I am a pro-lifer because of my identity, number one, as a Christian, and number two, as a social worker.
Because you've seen the way that abortion is hurting your community. Like you've seen the effects of abortion in India. You've seen the way that it hurts women. I know we've spoken about, some of the women that you and your wife have been able to help. Would you like to share with us maybe one of those stories of actually, encountering a woman who is in need and helping her to really find hope in life rather than the despair of an abortion decision?
Yes. So we call this in pro-life circles crisis pregnancy help, wherein we get to know if a woman or a family is planning or is driven to the situation of abortion, it is always a community effort. It is not individual effort. That is the first thing I want to tell all the pro-lifers and everyone who is listening to this podcast. Initially, when I met Bethany and Melanie around 3 years back, I heard them sharing about intervening in situations, talking to women and helping them. And I used to wonder, what can I do? I'm just a guy who doesn't know how to talk to women. Trust me, the Lord gives us a lot of graces to stand for life and share this love of the Lord to these women and families. In my case, the Lord has helped me a lot through my wife, who is also a pro-lifer. Her name is Esmin. Along with both of us, there are so many like-minded people in the Jesus Youth movement, in the charismatic Catholic circles, and also in the Protestant circles in the country. So I would say we are all one heart together in trying to save lives. One particular story which comes into my mind is this lady, small girl actually, who was doing her nursing studies. This was in the first year of her studies that she got pregnant from her boyfriend. And the thing about Indian society, Indian culture, at least in the South, is sex and sexuality is really sold under the guise of freedom and progressiveness. So many young people get into trouble without realizing the consequences. So this girl was one such person, and we got to know about her through her cousin, who was a Jesus youth. We helped her. I mean, she was in a terrible situation. We were able to counsel her, and we also shifted her to a crisis pregnancy center in South India. This was run by Protestant brothers and sisters. So, after a lot of help and a lot of networking, the baby boy was born. This is the first time I held a baby who was just 4 days old. Personally, me and my wife, we are struggling with infertility, but I would like to believe, and it is also a truth, that we both are spiritual fathers and mothers to so many people, so
Mhm.
many children whom we were able to save. So I'm sure this would inspire you to get into this. So the beauty
Mhm.
of this is we have National Crisis Pregnancy Helpline run by a group. We have crisis pregnancy centers. We have so many people, trying to probably accompany you to the hospital or maybe accompany you to, let's say, a government office. It's almost like we are ready to do whatever the family wants or whatever the women wants, because it is all about solving their problems for the sake of their baby as well as for the sake of their family. This is one.
Wow, amen to that. I love what you mentioned about spiritual motherhood and fatherhood. And this is something that I have just been praying a lot about recently, actually, myself, like just the beauty of the fact that we get to help nourish the lives of those who we are not even biologically related to. Like we are called to be, just as Christians, we're called to be like spiritual mothers and fathers to those who are in need around us. And
Yes.
just a couple of days ago, I was walking out of a store and I saw on the street corner a pro-life advocate with a sign who was having just a really like charitable but very heartfelt kind of debate with this individual who is sort of arguing a little bit more on the pro-choice side, or the really like open to abortion, like that they were okay with, the possibility that there were some hard situations, things like that. And I was just really moved by the way that these two pro-life advocates who are both there on the street corner were telling this young man who is arguing sort of for the other side that, look, if you know of any woman who is in a crisis pregnancy, reach out
Yes.
to us. We have families waiting to adopt these
Yeah.
children. One of the girls, she gave her business card to him and said, call me if you know of any woman who needs help, any baby who needs to be adopted. Like we are really a family who wants to just care for everyone in need. This is not like an intellectual debate alone. This is really a ministry to help those in need, not to point fingers or to condemn. And
Yes.
what moved me about that conversation on the street corner was that this individual who was leading the conversation was this young African American man, and just the way in which he spoke about the cause for life was deeply inspiring, and I think just shows the proper way that men can and should engage in the cause for life, to be voices of
Yes.
truth, also voices of compassion, and voices of very practical support for
Yes.
those who need help. And I know almost exactly a year ago,
Yes.
when I was in Bangalore, and I got to meet your wife, Esma, and she's just so
Yes,
lovely. I loved meeting her. And it's just hearing her talk about the ministry with the pregnancy center in India that you all are involved in, or just, providing this practical help to these mamas. I was very humbled myself. I am so thankful that we have just this international community of pro-life leaders who
yes,
are advocating for the cause of life in the communities that need it the most, especially in a country like India, where there's a lot of this rhetoric around population control, right? I mean, in India, India is trending towards sub replacement fertility rate. Like, it's not
yes,
like this is really based on a lie that began in the 20th century by
yes,
Malthus, who sort of argued that the world population is going to be expanding so rapidly that there will not be enough resources for everyone.
yes,
And what was very clear to me, when I went to India, every single person who I saw, whether they were poor, whether they were rich, they had equal human dignity.
yes,
And the lie that the world is overpopulated and that we should try to limit the number of people on this earth is the same lie that drives the abortion industry, that God's gift of life is a burden.
yes,
And the problem is not people. The problem is not the gift of life from God. The
yes,
problem is like resource distribution and development, things which we can work toward to
yes,
foster and to nourish the
yes,
gift of life as spiritual mothers and fathers in this world. So
yes,
thank you for your ministry. I'm very deeply inspired, and I'm so glad that we were able to join together just pro-life youth from around India during that workshop in Bangalore. And I know that you are, still working on the ground to help to mentor these young people just in your community, in your own life, to be able to embrace God's gift of life. So I guess I would love to ask you, what would you say to a young man who is very deeply convicted about the dignity of unborn life, but maybe has been shut down by someone who said, you don't have a voice because you can't get pregnant yourself? What would you say to men to sort of encourage them to embrace that spiritual fatherhood of being provider and protector to these women and unborn babies who need them?
yes. First thing I want to tell is I have been shut by a group of women when I was sharing, the dignity of life, and I felt deeply troubled. But then the more I thought about it, the more I realized that this sort of hatred or ignorance or indifference is really stemming out from past wounds of people. So this is in connection with
Mm.
what Rachel was talking about earlier, that men should be the voice of compassion because many women perceive us to be a voice of condemnation. And men should also be the voice of taking responsibility, really, not just for our lives, but when we hear, let's say, a woman in trouble in the community, maybe we could be the bridge by which the women can be connected to a family or to another elderly women who can support.
Mm.
A lot of the pregnancy cases which we handle, we do not really require a lot of financial support. It's just a lot of emotional support, which if we have a heart of love, we could provide. If we have a heart of love as well as little time. I remember this case which had come from another continent. I won't be able to divulge into a lot of details, but this was a lady from my community, the Malayali community, but from a different continent. She initially was checking with another friend of mine about March for Life. What happens in March for Life? Why are you against abortion, etc. In a very curious way. And then this friend uh, referred her to me, and then I was talking, and then she kind of revealed, I'm pregnant. Uh, Again from my boyfriend. We were initially planning to get married, but he is confused. Let's just say like that. Now, I spoke to my wife. I got a little help from her as to how I should talk to her. I realized that this pregnant woman, was basically wanting another person to just listen to her. It could be us men, or it could be someone whom we can connect them to. So 7, 8 months later, I could see a very beautiful baby girl, and the feeling you have is just unexplainable. The good news is the Lord has worked in their family, and the mother is back with her, boyfriend back then, and they are leading a very good life right now. So it is just that we should have men, we should have that heart of love. Often pro-choicers think because we are snarky on them. A lot of times these outreaches, these conversations become very argumentative, and Some of the
Mm.
pro-choicers express or they think in their heart, you can't even respect me properly. How are you advocating for some baby in some unknown womb? I think pro-lifers need to, be more compassionate. Christian pro-lifers, I would say, we should really pray to the Lord in order to fill us with His love, because without His love, we cannot
Mm.
communicate, our love to them, right? So ultimately, I would say, pro-life message is also the message that you are precious, I am precious, so is the baby in the mother's womb. So we have to really learn to communicate this.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. Every time I speak with you, Ants, I just very perceptibly see the way in which your faith influences your work and your voice of compassion, your voice of empathy toward those who are motivated in this cause by anger, on one side or the other. I think that just the example of charity and compassion is one which is the core of this issue. It is really the foundation upon which all other work must flow. And I'd love to ask you kind of to close, how does your faith motivate your work? How do you see your vocation as a Christian and your vocation as a pro-life advocate and social worker come together?
Yes, it was Saint John Paul II, through his encyclical letter Evangelium Vitae. He told, the gospel of life and the gospel of God's love to mankind is one indivisible gospel. So to be Christian is to be by default pro-life. Think about this. Our Lord and
Mm.
Savior entered this world through a womb out of all places. Come as a king. He could have done anything. He's God, right? But he came as this tiny, weak, vulnerable human being in a woman's womb. When you also look at historic Christianity, you realize that Christians have always stood for the weak and the vulnerable and have always been against abortion, euthanasia, killing of the weak, killing of the sick, children, etc. So, as I told earlier, me being a pro-lifer has to do a lot with me being a Christian, because as Christians and Catholics we are called to counter this culture of death prevailing against us, a culture which sees human beings as items which can be used and discarded, which gives more priority to efficiency, more priority to personal priorities or personal preferences rather than the objective and intrinsic value of human life. As a social worker, when I analyze,
Absolutely.
yes, as a social worker, when I analyze this, I realize that a lot of human rights abuses in history have come about with this propaganda, this messaging, that messaging of dehumanization. For example, when you look at the Nazi genocide, the Holocaust, wherein around 60 lakh Jews were killed very systematically. The killings came after the propaganda and the messaging. The propaganda was Jews were similar to rats
Mm.
who were extracting the resources which were originally belonging to the Germans. You know what we can see
Mm.
in the current abortion narrative? We are not even, when we say we, the media, the government, many times are not even calling this baby a baby. The names which are associated are clump of cells, fetus, products of conception, etc. This is dehumanization happening right in front of our eyes. This has
Right.
happened.
Who are quote unquote stealing the resources of its mother.
Yes, yes. Yeah, a lot of times the human baby is also called parasites, which is biologically wrong. Yeah. So,
Yes, yes. Well, I'm just reminded of the fact that when we receive a little child such as this, in the name of Christ, we receive Christ himself. And that's why I think Christians tend to be pretty active in the pro-life cause, because we see the dignity of each human individual
yes,
mirrored in the way that we embrace the Christ child himself.
yes,
I know that in India, there is a lot of persecution against Christians and against pro lifers, where, evangelism on the street has been persecuted. And even those who are advocating outside of these hospitals which conduct abortions to be able to pray, to counsel women going inside, are persecuted as well under those same laws. And we know that those who are persecuted for the sake of righteousness are called blessed. Blessed are those
yes,
who are persecuted for the sake of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven.
yes,
And when I have such a deep heart, a place in my heart for Christians in India, pro-life advocates in India, because I know that you are being attacked. You are being attacked by the government for standing for life publicly, because in a Hindu dominant country, Christians are not welcome in the way that other citizens are. So thank you for your courage to stand in a culture which is also, discriminating against unborn baby girls. I know that in India, they had to actually illegalize gender testing
Yes,
because so many families were aborting their baby girls because they wanted a baby boy instead.
yes,
And just this attack against baby girls is really the same attack against their mothers. It is an
yes,
industry which is targeting women. Hurts
yes,
unborn baby girls, it hurts born girls who are young and pregnant, or older women who are pregnant. And because of that, I think there's just this beautiful invitation, this beautiful space for men to be a voice of compassion, a voice of hope, and a voice of love, regardless of whether this is your sister, your wife, your daughter, or just your friend or a stranger on the street. Because we believe we are this one human family, we desire to love all, even those we're not related to. And I've just seen that reflected so clearly in your pro-life ministry in India. So thank you so much, Ants, for all that you do. We're so glad
praise
you're
God.
able to come on the podcast and just share your story. If you have anything else you'd like to share with us, we'll just sort of dedicate this to God. I think just to thank God for giving us this time to speak, but also just allow Him to speak whatever He wishes through us.
Yes, yes. I just wanted to add this point that yes, female feticide is a big problem in India. The biggest irony is a lot of Hindu deities are women, in fact. They have women gods, but they are not ready to receive a girl in their families. That is a sad
Mm.
reality. My final parting words, especially I want to give glory to the Lord who have called young people to this mission. A lot of new people, new leaders are coming with a heart for life. I want to praise God, and I also want to thank different organizations and ministries collaborating with us. As I told earlier, this is a community effort. We help each other a lot. We mentor each other. We support and provide resources to each other. There is Life for All, which is the prominent pro-life organization in the country, based in Coimbatore. They have a national pregnancy helpline number, which would be, I hope, would be added to this chat. So any women and men and families who are facing crisis situations, please feel free to call this helpline and seek
Yes.
assistance. You are not alone. I also would like to thank Jesus Youth and Catholic Charismatic Renewal. Recently, Catholics have come together in the country to stand against life. We call ourselves Indian Catholics United for Life. So I am asking for your valuable prayers for this initiative. I would also like to thank Pro-Life Global for mentoring me. And also, I would like to thank Alliance Defending Freedom, ADF. I'm pretty sure most of you might know about their work in the US and around the world. Overall, I would like to thank the Lord for this opportunity and for all the different blessings and opportunities He has given in intervening and saving lives.
All the praise to the Lord. And we will include the number for the pregnancy helpline for anyone listening from India who needs help in an unplanned pregnancy. We'll include that in the description for this episode, just down below, so you can reference that now or after the episode.
Yeah.
So thank you so much, Ants. Please give my best to your beautiful wife Esmond, and
Yes.
you're in my
Thank
prayers.
you. Thank you so much. Yes. Thank you, Rachel.
Mhm.